Hi everyone, it's Fiona here from fionamarks.com, and I'm back with my Friday 5 a little early this week because we have New Year's Day coming up on Friday. And I thought you might like some astrological questions to reflect on as you look back over 2020 and make this crossing the threshold into 2021. So let's share the screen and get started. So I'm going to talk about reflecting on 2021 and those major astrological events that we experienced. And then I'm going to remind you of the 4 paths from Vedic science, and we'll have a look at Aquarius coming up in the new year. And then I'm going to sneak in a reminder about ghee as well. So 2020 has been a very unusual year for so many of us, and something that we have shared in collectively as a community across the world in different ways. We've all been touched by this experience of the coronavirus and all that that's meant as each of our individual governments have tried to act appropriately and restrict some of our movements to try to maintain access to healthcare and hospitals. So it's been at the same time a very personal experience and at the same time a very global experience. So I wonder what you feel that you have learned this year. Perhaps a year where those of us who are introverted have felt the pace of life and the pace of interaction just coming down to something that is maybe more sustainable. But for those of us who really enjoy the stimulation of external events and travel and people, at a challenging year, and the balance, depending on where your if we talk about astrologically, where your Rahu and Ketu access is around personal freedom versus being part of the collective. It's been some very interesting challenges along that continuum, and different people have handled that differently, and different friends and contacts have handled that differently as well. So a lot. I encourage you to reflect on your year of 2020. I think there's a lot of good things for us to learn from this experience. And one of the ways that we could reflect on the year is to look back at those major astrological events that happened this year. And the headline for that could be Capricorn. There's just a whole lot that has gone down in Capricorn in 2020. First of all, we had that eclipse at the end of 2019 that took place in Capricorn and involved the sun and the moon in Ketu. And that's how you get an eclipse. You need those players together or on the same 180-degree axis. But not only that, we had Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto also involved in that space in Capricorn. So an enormous year. And as we just talked about, that ripple effect of implications on everybody's personal freedom and health and anxieties and things that we worried about, and the restrictions that we had on travel, just an enormous amount of ingredients in that eclipse. And then Jupiter and Saturn spent the whole year together in Capricorn. And Capricorn is the place in the zodiac where Jupiter feels debilitated in Vedic astrology. It's where Jupiter's expansiveness is really contracted and forced to look down into the dirt and the grit of Capricorn, because Capricorn is a very realistic sign. It's where the rubber hits the road. If you think about Sagittarius having this vision, the archer with that eye on the prize, that spiritual evolution prize, Capricorn is where one needs to make that vision hit the rubber, hit the road, where one needs to make it a reality. So it's the place in the sky where Jupiter perhaps feels challenged around hope because of that looking down at the truth or the realism of Capricorn. But not only that, that's hard enough for Jupiter, but to be doing that constantly in the presence of Saturn, who's been very hard taskmaster for Jupiter this year. So a huge year of learning for Jupiter around hope. And we've talked about that in various newsletters and on the blogs already. Got to remember that Capricorn is an Arthur sign. It's a hard work sign, and we'll talk about that a little bit in this next slide. So you may have experienced the need to do the hard work this year. And we've talked about Capricorn also being tamasic and realistic. And certainly we can say that there have been restrictions. I'm sure that all of you have experienced that, or it's been in your awareness. But also, another way to describe those restrictions that this particular astrological combination comes up with is that we have been held. And how have you experienced being held this year? How have you felt held, and perhaps comforted? Who of your friends and your community have been those ones that have been part of your cozy network of what's really important? So I encourage you to reflect on being held as we are when we're comforted, and that astrologically, perhaps some of those restrictions that we've been experiencing have been for our own energetic healing as well. The other main astrological thing that happened this year was Mars spent 6 months in Aries, which is the sign that Mars owns. So how have you felt that? Obviously, it was retrograde for a period of that, but have you felt that you have actually also achieved things and taken action and moved forward, even in these constrained times? So interesting contrast of energy there. And we'll pick that up a little bit later as well, actually. And if you want to have some questions to reflect on your 2020, what about using those themes from the 4 paths from Vedic science, the Dharma path of inspiration and those things that we really must do to live up to our life path? I always think of Dharma as being when you get to the pearly gates and you look St. Peter in the eye and he asks you, did you do what you went down there to do? And if you can answer back clearly, with open eyes and open heart that yes, I did my Dharma, then that's what you know that your Dharma is. So how have you done your Dharma, your inspiration in 2020? How have you progressed that life journey, hero's journey, that calling that you have? Arthur is another path that we're all walking during this lifetime here on the planet, and it is the hard work that we must do, that we all must do to sustain our bodies being here on a physical planet. So what hard work did you do in 2020? Karma are our desires. And what desires did you fulfill in 2020? The pleasure of being here on the planet in a human body, what a gift. How did you fulfill your desires in 2020? And moksha, our liberation and evolution. How did you spiritually evolve in 2020? And these paths you will have seen for those who used to come for massages in the office. This was up on the wall. This is my drawing that reminds me of those 4 paths that throughout our lives we're always balancing priorities on those 4 paths. Sometimes our hard work is just essential and becomes more important. Sometimes our spiritual inspiration and practice becomes more important. Sometimes we get to fulfill our desires. And sometimes there's that call of duty to our life calling that just must be answered. So this is up on the Redbubble Vedic art of all of those drawings that I have that represent different different parts of my experience with Vedic science. Oh yeah, here they come. Yeah, so you can see others. We'll talk about them all, I'm sure, over the series of these weekly newsletters. Okay, so these are the questions that you can reflect on for 2020. And what about coming up 2021? I think a word that we have to start with is Aquarius, because this Jupiter Saturn experience has moved now from Capricorn into Aquarius. We all know how big that experience was for us in 2020. So what's it going to be like in 2021 in this new sign of Aquarius, which is an air sign as opposed to an earth sign? Aquarius for me is forming as like my favorite zodiac sign at the moment because of this what is good for all, this collective calling that Aquarius has of bringing back all of that learning and transformation through the whole zodiac, bringing that back to our community and building resources for all. A dear friend of mine who is sitting downstairs right now, was said to me at the start of 2020 that her spiritual teacher had said something around that we're moving into the age where what is good for the other is what is good for me. And I shared this with my brother, and he shared that that's like the game of hacky sack. You know, we can only win if we all play. And how can we create a world where what is good for the other is truly what is good for me? So I've held that as my vision for 2020, and I'm looking forward to maintaining that into 2021. If you know your own birth time, and therefore you know what your rising sign or ascendant sign is, what house is Aquarius for you? And is that a Dharma house, an Artha house, a Karma house, or a Moksha house? And that might give you a hint of where 2021 will personally be heading for you, because it's this Saturn energy. Aquarius is owned by Saturn. Saturn is going to be in the sign of Aquarius most of the whole year of 2021. And on New Year's Day, that's a little transit map that you can see there, all planets except for Mars will be answering to Saturn. And so if we skip Mars there, we can have a look that Rahu is in the sign of Gemini, which is owned by Mercury. Mercury is in Saturn sign of Capricorn. The moon is in Leo, which is owned by the sun. The sun is in Capricorn's sign of the Saturn sign of Capricorn. And then we have K2 and Venus here in Sagittarius, owned by Jupiter. Where's Jupiter? It's right there in Saturn sign of Aquarius. So I think a great answer or a great question for your own chart for 2021 is, what is the meaning of Saturn in your own chart? What is it trying to teach you in your unique chart? So here are some questions for you to reflect on for your coming year of 2021. And I'm sneaking in one last Friday 5, which is, as I'm recording this early, we're just having the full moon. If you're watching this right now early, great time to make ghee. Super simple on your stovetop. It's very balancing for Vata. And if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere, it's cold now, and that is drying for Vata and destabilizing for Vata. So we need to add more ghee, add more of that luscious, nourishing, lubricating fat or oil, because that's what Vata is leaking out in its openness, in its dryness. It's losing all of that luscious, life-giving, I don't know, like mana. So I hope that you get the chance to make some ghee and nourish your body if it is Vata challenged. Okay, that is the end of my Friday 5 for the year. Only left to wish you a joyous New Year celebration in all of our unique and cozy ways this year of celebrating New Year, and to share from my heart that intention to create a world with you where what is good for others, what is good for all of us, is truly what is good for me. And I look forward to inhabiting that world with you moving into the future, including in 2021. Thanks for all your support this year. It's been a huge year of change for me and of growing this astrological experience. Thanks for everyone who's been part of my journey in 2021. And I can't wait to see you in 2021 and see how this grows and moves and changes. Blessings, and see you next week.